And we are live. All right, so let's see. Okay. All right. So, hello everybody. Okay, I see our participants are coming in. So, good evening everyone and welcome. We are joined here today by Bob Hicok and Kim Addonizio. And we are here for, of course, our event of poetry reading. Before we get going, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping here and get some details. Going. Okay, so first off, my name is Devin. Hi. I work at Green Apple. Ordinarily, I look like this with a mask over my face, but I swear it's me. I'm there. And yeah, so before we get going, I'm going to announce some upcoming events we've got coming up here. This Friday, March 26th at 6 p.m., we've got Shira Spector and Phoebe Gluckner in conversation about Spector's new graphic memoir, Red Rock Baby Candy. Described by Book Riot as an explosion of color, images, and words, Red Rock Candy Baby covers the recent decade of Spector's life, which includes, quote, her tenacious struggle to get pregnant, the emotional turmoil of her father's cancer diagnosis and eventual death, and her recollections of past relationships with her parents and her partner. Her conversation partner, Phoebe Gluckner, is an artist with a background in medical illustration, as well as a writer and novelist, best known for 2002's The Diary of a Teenage Girl in Words and Pictures. After that, coming up on Thursday, April the 8th, we have Gabriela Garcia and Julia Delgado Lopera discussing Garcia's debut novel Of Women and Salt as part of Litquake's Epicenter series. From 19th century cigar factories to present-day detention centers from Cuba to Mexico, Of Women and Salt is a kaleidoscopic portrait of betrayals, personal and political, self-inflicted and those done by others that have shaped the lives of a collection of extraordinary women. Garcia's fiction and poems have appeared in Best American Poetry, Tin House, Ziziba, Iowa Review, Michigan Quarterly Review, Cincinnati Review, Black Warrior Review, and elsewhere. Her conversation partner, Julia Delgado Lopera, is most recently the author of Fibar Tropical and more generally a true multi-hyphenate working in and around queer historiography with a focus on Latinx communities. So let's see how we're doing here. Okay, looks like we've got people coming in. So attendees, hello. I'm letting you know that we do have a Q&A feature. So you should see that. Go ahead and type your questions into there. We will be collecting questions throughout our reading tonight. And at about 15 minutes to the end of the hour, we will do a quick Q&A session. So get those questions in there. All right, so moving on to our main event of the night. Tonight we have Bob Hicok, who has published several volumes of poetry, most recently Red Rover on Copper Canyon Press. He teaches creative writing at Virginia Tech and received fellowships from the Guggenheim Foundation, the National Endowment of the Arts, and won the Pushcart Prize for Poetry. His work has regularly been featured in the annual Best American Poetry collections. And our other reader for tonight is Kim Addonizio, who's the author of 8 poetry collections, 2 novels, 2 story collections, and 2 books on writing poetry. The Poet's Companion with Dory Lowe and Ordinary Genius. Her poetry collection, Tell Me, was a finalist for the National Book Award. She also has 2 word music CDs, Swearing, Smoking, Drinking, and Kissing with Susan Brown, My Black Angel, the companion to My Black Angel, Blues, Poems, and Portraits, a collaboration with woodcut artist Charles D. Jones. Her latest books, her latest book is right here. It looks like this. It is called Now We're Getting Somewhere, and I believe we'll mostly have readings from that. So on the topic of books, I did want to let you know that if you would like to support Green Apple and purchase these books, all you got to do is go to greenapplebooks.com and right in that search bar, type in Bob Hicok or Kim Addonizio, and you should get a lovely collection of their works available for purchase online. All right, so we are at 7 after the hour, and that's enough of me rambling on and on. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass it off to you guys. I believe Bob is gonna be reading here first. So take it away.
Thank you, Devin. That's it. I'm all done. Thank you. This first poem is called The Big Book of Therapy. If you think of humans as rare as snowflakes, your world is constantly melting. If you think of humans as essential to keeping dogs happy, someone will always want to buy you a beer. Now and then, and now and then. Low clouds, an apple tree marks the horizon. The last time I loved someone other than the woman I love, we weren't at war in the Middle East. Low clouds around my head, fallen apples mark the horizon. The last time I loved someone other than the woman I love, we weren't at war in the Middle East. She was gay and alive. A gay woman and straight man make an interesting couple of birthday cards if they have construction paper, scissors, various glitters, and a friend far away they want to surprise. There's always weather as far as I can tell, and men who talk to goats, and women who'd give a child a glass of milk if they have it. And I always think horses lay down and sleep at night, just as stars do during the day. And I never thought of her dying when we weren't kissing or holding hands, weren't doing all the things a straight man and gay woman matched emotionally, but not sexually, never do. If only because the time we tried, it was funny, like a roller skate trying to tap dance, or moonlight hoping to grow a rose. I hadn't thought of her in months, but the clouds resemble wishing she were alive, and the apple tree resembles standing still and hoping the right life has chosen me. And war resembles what we've been best at 3/4 of the time I've been alive. Clouds descend, but fog aspires. I prefer fog. I prefer to say her name far away from you. To an apple, the tree and wind couldn't hold when I pick it up and shine it until it's so bright you'd think cancer doesn't exist. There's always memory as far as I can tell, and men who'd love to be covered in birds, and women who have their wounds held against them. And I always think I'll get to be rain again soon enough, with her and Eve and you, maybe, and you with yours and yours with theirs, such that everything that will ever be grows. Breathe. I breathe, you breathe, we all breathe for ice cream. To breathe masked as thieves, to walk and sit with the depth of a grave between us. We stayed inside, we tried to hide. Millions died, billions wondered, will I join them? To breathe, of all things to grieve, make brave, to fear is shiv. I thought I should not breathe in public air. I knew I could not breathe without a care. We went out into open air, our masked faces reduced to eyes. We were saved by the graves between us. Millions died, billions wondered, Is distance the shape of life from now on? To breathe, respire, aspire. I aspire to have you here, to see and kiss your face, to move in space among hips and worries, hurries and shouts, on a subway, bus, and a museum, to be roughed and tumbled, to reach, breach, to broach a hand on a shoulder, to grow older amid, among, to breathe, to draw in air without a care, to have you near and not fear your breath, your life is death. I miss cheeks and chins, frowns and grins, staring at a face held by the hands of a book, looking over at someone whose mind has wandered, the moment they see me, seeing them return, the smile of recognizing lost and found in each other. Breathe, grieve, sieve, shiv, live, love. A breath thou art, a breath and a lean, a look, a weight of eyes and hair, the pause in your goodbyes, how your lips let go of words. Everything we do is rooted in, is a branch of breath. Some of us are afraid of breath, and I am killed by this new style of death, distanced and alone. Have you Zoom funeraled yet? Been a ghost in a box, mourning a ghost in a box. I cry for those I couldn't sprinkle soil upon. I want an end. I want to love, to dig them up and apologize for their untouched goodbyes. What say you, God? Besides, so what? It's coming on Christmas. They're cutting down payrolls, bidding up stock prices, and singing songs of joy and peace written by Milton Friedman. My sister was fired, told, "You do not fit our new corporate image," as was a woman on maternity leave the same day, a week before Thanksgiving. Turkey, stuffing, pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie. She started doing Instacart right away, made $100, is thinking of selling real estate. Her mortgage weighs $560 a month. She's 65. She's 65. Keeps dreaming she's eating from dumpsters, a reasonable fear. Not like worrying the moon might crash into the earth, even though it's slinking away. Even though I'm listening, emotionally, I'm slinking away while talking to her on the phone. I have tenure. People like me don't get fired. We write books on capitalism and the stresses it causes in people's lives. We are brave in our comma placements. In the comas of our disciplines, we are brave. But life, what can you say about it if there isn't a guillotine in the sound of your boss's ahem? I can't be human when I talk to her. Can't say the only thing there is to say. I know what it's like, what you're going through. Have fallen through a trapdoor into the arms of the uncaring air. My sister was fired. She's 65. Thanksgiving is near. Turkey, stuffing, pumpkin pie. And not a cloud or chair, tree or molecule changed or cried. Many have wondered how much the soul weighs. The answer is easier when the proprietor is old and without a job. Nothing, or however much believing your life is over weighs everything, or so I'm imagining I've heard. Pacific. This kid had never seen the ocean. I'd never seen a kid seeing the ocean for the first time. And the ocean had never been this close to Main Street, according to the woman behind the desk at the hotel, where the night before, a moth landed on my shoulder, along with the moon. He told us he was from up north, then pointed at a man and woman fighting so far away we couldn't hear what they were saying while their arms were furious with the air. It's so big, he said. The biggest thing in the world that isn't the world, I thought would be a way to put it, but just nodded. By standing still next to his standing still and my wife's, I was hoping we'd build a little shelter for him, a moment he could hold in the car during the long drive with his untamed parents and think it was nice listening to the radio of the ocean with those people. But that's the kind of thought I'd have in a poem, not what a kid would think at all. And it was rude to tell the moth it was a symbol of death. It reminded me of snowflakes on my shoulder, another kind of softness that doesn't exist, except as the desire to carry someone barefoot over broken glass. Remedy. In deciding what I am, I've ruled out cat, vulture, shoe, a sadist who tortures people to death in a Syrian hospital, a president who separates families at the border, a handful of purple irises at the beginning of the path to heaven. Is there memory in the shade of a tree of a lynching 50 years ago when I was 9? And do I love that tree? Love the sinner, not the sin. Forgive the electricity, not the singeing of genitals. The more I know about human nature, the more I plan to be tall grass in a field. Until then, I'll tell my wife I love her in Toronto and Blacksburg in bed, in pajamas and blue jeans and song, in theory and fact and dream. I will not gouge a man's eye out, I promise. Yet the eye is out, the man is dead, and the geese I'm listening to have no idea that we're as wild as the coyotes that would tear them apart. If given a choice, I'd not choose to be human. If given a choice how to be human, I'd say like a glass of water. Well, I have no answers to the questions I don't know to ask. I can love my wife in Detroit, in general, in detail, in vain, in spite, in depth, in the shallow light of the moon, in contrast to hating myself, in sympathy and in stealth, in time as a ghost, and right now as a poet wondering if surgeons, during a transplant, tell the shivering and recycled heart it is loved. I assume so, but I've never asked a heart on its second time around, were you christened? Were you blessed? Are you worth all this trouble? I never liked the patter between poems, but it is almost impossible to do it in this context.
Uh-oh.
Although I just did a little. This poem is called Pressure. The softer I touch your cheek, the softer I want to. The process of getting an abortion was kinder 40 years ago. I'm going to sprint up a hill one last time before my hips give out. With the breath of my fingertips, I brush the fine hairs that persist in their desire to keep you warm, that recall when we were wild and lived under the sky. No one screamed or waved a Bible as we entered the Planned Parenthood lot off the main drag and walked in the front door. Before my bones turn to kindling, I'll dig a hole for my grave to fit into and be buried without me. No one spit at her for not wanting her womb filled just yet or ever. She'd fallen for a guy who looked as if his chin had built a log cabin, like his plaid shirts and blue eyes could chop down a forest, But then he disappeared into Alaska and left her staring at a can of beans and a gun on the table. The goal is to touch just an atom or two of you, to change your velocity or direction as little as possible, as I observe how happy you make me. And they spoke kindly to and of her, and let her cry as long as she needed to be rain. And the nurse touched her forehead during, and I held her hand during and after. And the sun and no one called her a whore as we left. Kinder. If I can be a whisper between the caterwauls of our hearts, and aloof and glowing simultaneously like the moon, and pull the oceans of you toward me and leave you untouched, is the contradiction of love. We hold cities and galaxies in our eyes. There isn't enough time to say how little time there is. They were kind and she cocooned before coming out one day to show me a notebook on the front of which she'd written hereafter and underlined twice to emphasize the emphasis. Before my body is a leaf on a pile of leaves, I want to touch you once so delicately that we shatter and fix ourselves in place, kind of like how an imploded building seems to hang in the air, recalling what it had been like to stand tall, only without the dynamite or crash, and then lunch or the rest of our lives will be ready soon. The ocean is 70% hypocrite. Day and night, the shore ignores its own advice. Shh, shh. The news. Instant bird song when the rain stopped. A horrible man wants to be president again. One of our cats has been sleeping under a sycamore where her mother is buried. The scarcity of moments during the day when we stop everything and listen to each other's hearts. Robins, mourning doves, blue jays were either singing in the rain or started singing as soon as it hushed to a whisper against the roof. He admitted grabbing crotches and was elected anyway, as if America wanted arrogance to set an example for our children. I've never slept over a grave. What's wrong with me? The paucity of rhythmic and spontaneous clapping in public spaces. The ferocious rain had no impact on what the birds have to say. They're stoics and interesting to watch come to the feeder in groups. Mourning doves and blue jays first, then robins. How does anyone know what to do? He lies and lies about lying, and millions feel absolved from the constraints of decency and facts. The obligation is to offer the tenderness I want shown to me, to lift and carry you across your worst August, your horrible night, away from your miserable job into a glen or copse, or chaplain twirling his cane on a screen that's 50 feet wide and 20 feet high in a room otherwise filled with night. I decide our cat knows her mother is there, just as I decide that the maple tree is happy coming into leaf, to feel spring on its back and lifting from underneath. He's lied till the people who love him hear nothing but the noise that rivers from his mouth. He's cauterized the idea of truth and replaced it with the sound of his ego asserting its godhood. I'll pet the cat later and wonder what she remembers of her day, what the rain remembers of its fall. If birdsong is my favorite hinge between the past and future. How can I be small and smaller? Say thank you with more spine and hip in response to this man. Help your eyes remember roses and the smell of mown grass and ask who wants the last piece of cake a chance to shine. Listening to him talk is like watching your father masturbate in the shower while he holds a picture of a child. I'm terrified that millions cheer his bottomless need to see his face reflected in every glass and human surface because they want to be absolved of empathy. Rain, rain, go away. Rain, rain, come back. How does anyone know what to do? The importance of stopping once a day and turning to whoever's near and holding their child or bear in your arms long enough to remember we are differently the same and in this together. And I'll end with this poem. My mind from wandering where it will go. Rain comes in the house. We have toast. I try not to call it a leak. That seems reductive. I gather it in a pot and make tea of my problems that tastes like shingles and plywood. I add honey, cinnamon, and cringe over something stupid I said in public 30 years ago. Just one of many drips in my head I can't plug. One day when I'm on the roof pulling up old shingles and plywood, and before I put down new plywood and shingles, the sun will fly in and graze where it hasn't in decades, and I'll write a note to the future on a joist. As a man who is almost certainly dead, I ask you to sit a moment and sing a favorite song. If I hear you, the air will surround you and you will breathe. I will have proven there's an afterlife, that I was adept at home repairs and messages in bottles and not falling down. I don't often dwell on my resume, but when I do, I tend to think 57,000 pages is too long. A person should be able to sum up their life in 4 words. Good pants, better shoes. Liked cats, loved dogs. Let me out now. Is that a gun? Can we kiss forever? 5 words. Can we kiss forever again? Thank you for listening.
I guess we're gonna rock on. Am I live here, Devin?
Yep, you are all set to go. Thank you very much, Bob. That was feeling that. Yeah. So, Kim, you are ready to go at your leisure.
Okay, great. Um, I have to say that this does feel a little like Bob and I got on a Zoom call together and decided to read our books to each other. So, I know you're out there even though I can't hear your breathing. And I maybe I should also say give a patter warning to Bob that there may be patter. So, forgive me if I talk a little bit between poems. And I also want to just give another plug for our books for Green Apple, greenapplebooks.com, I think it was. To get either of our books, Bob's is Red Rover, mine is Now We're Getting Somewhere. And I think they've got some book plates too, because I signed a bunch of them. So that means that you can get a signed copy, even though it'll be on a book plate and not on the book itself. But you can get a signed copy if you want. And also just just a plug to support your independent bookstores, local, not local. They're all struggling, and this is really the time we need to step up as part of the poetry community and help keep that community alive. So I'm going to start with the first poem in the book, which is what I've generally been starting with, and why change now. This is called Night in the Castle. I'm not sure what to do about that scorpion twitching on the wall. Maybe I should slam it with this book of terrible poetry, or just read aloud to it until it dies of a histrionic metaphor, bleeding out on the ancient stones in a 5-octave aria. If I get a little drunker, I might try to murder it with my sandal. I gave up on mercy a while ago. That's what happens when you live in a castle on an artist's grant. You look at the late afternoon Umbrian light smearing itself over the tomato vines and feel entitled, like an underage duchess whose husband has finally died of gout, leaving her free for more secret liaisons with the court musician. She might even have poisoned the Duke, that lecherous shit. It's hard to remember what life was like before this. And I don't want to. I want to stay here and poison the king next. I want to be a feared and beloved queen, ordering up fresh linens and beheadings, locking up bad poets in their artisanal hair shirts, torturing academics with pornographic marionette performances. Meanwhile, the scorpion is still there twitching slightly, reciting something about violence and the prison of ego. And I can hear the clashing armies on the wide lawn outside, sinking down into history and then standing up again. This is a little 14-line mono-rhymer. High Desert, New Mexico. Temple of the rattlesnake's religion, deluge and heat surge, crash of the atoms rupture. Night blackens like a violin, and bright flower falls from the kitchens of heaven. This is where the seams begin to loosen, where you can walk for miles in any direction. Rabbit, lizard, raven, insect, drone, and almost forget the shame of being human. Smoke tree, sage, not everything is broken. Horses appear at this remote cabin to stand outside and wait for you to come with a single apple. Abandon your despair, you who enter here forsaken. The wind is saying something. Listen. And this poem takes its title from a line by Paul Guest. And it goes right into the first line of the poem. The earth is about used up, like a sodden tampon and no place to throw it away, like an armpit-yellowed vintage blouse with see-through pearl bubble sleeves, like a tissue travel pack in a foreign bathroom and you have to squat over a hole in the floor. The earth is about used up is the point I'm trying to drunkenly steer through the potholed streets into the suburban garage of your ears, though you probably already know what's up with the earth, but I am telling you because the earth is about used up. Like the preserved, atrophied brain of a retired NFL defensive lineman leaking cryoprotectant. Like the tender ass of the cow and the large heart of the racehorse. Like a wind-up ladybug, crawling in decelerating circles on Lux Touch marble tiles inlaid with precious stones. Even the ocean is gasping for air, while someone smokes a cigarette through their throat hole and sodas go flat in the heat. And a stack of National Geographics bloats in a rained-on cardboard box in a fallen shed some animal dragged itself into to shit away its life. I'm standing on that box with my teeny megaphone, bringing you the news you know, wildly virtue signaling, waving my mortal handkerchief, dropping it at your feet. Where it burns, here, I don't want it, you take it, please, you take it. I have a roommate that I live with, but she's been with her girlfriend in Minnesota. I'm in Oakland, and she's been there for, I don't know how, 4 months or more, and so I've been getting even lonelier than usual. And so one night, I guess inspired by edibles, I decided to go back on Match.com, which I'd done without you know, hating it a couple of times before and gotten off almost as soon as I got on. But I went, fuck it, I'll go back on Match. And so this was written in a previous. I won't tell you how the latest one's going. The jury's still out on the latest foray, but this was from a previous one, and it's called alienmatch.com. I am trying to center my spacecraft over a volcano. I am 6 trillion years old, but am often mistaken for an asteroid. My body type is indeterminate. Sometimes I resemble a white marble floor on which stained glass light diffusedly falls. At other times, an aortic clot. The first thing people notice about me is the caul over my third eye. I would like to engage in heated conversation about which is the dish sponge and which the counter sponge. I would like to date you if you would acknowledge my special qualities without my having to exhibit any. After 6 trillion years, my spacecraft is a little tired. Sometimes I spend whole nights trying to phone my dead parents, running from tigers, looking for a condom. Mostly, I feel confused as a daffodil who didn't get the memo about fluttering. I keep trying to wake up in my dreams. If I didn't know better, I might think you were in them. And, well, speaking of loneliness, I'll just do this one. It's called Ways of Being Lonely. Like a haunted river, no bridge wants to lay itself down over. Like a taxidermy grizzly in the student union. You cry at a frequency only subatomic insects can hear. That time with him in Houston. Sometimes you flame into a scary flower. An eruption of coherence in the postmodern seminar. You stand in a shallow creek and your reflection floats slowly downstream without you. Alcohol is your emotional support animal. The fan hums erratically. An unclaimed suitcase of miniature toiletries burst open on the baggage carousel. Like an amoeba without an e-scooter. An extra in an epic battle scene trampled by a non-equity horse. You're a red-breasted flute, but everyone else is a dowel. A Zen koan blooming in the White House rose garden. Sun-damaged curtains in the parlor of an abandoned friendship. You're the queen, but you're a bee being sucked into the pool's filtration system. Like a virgin touched for the very last time. Spooky piano music rising from the dishwater. You wake up alone to a bird reciting Keats. And this is called X, as in EX. When I think about him now, I think about the money he stole from me. I remember the mice in his couch and the dying fish in his aquarium, and also feeling like a gilded royal barge was ceremoniously moving through my blood, while LED snow fell theatrically in the folds of my brain. I remember thinking nothing could ruin our love, which is what everyone thinks at first, but it turns out everyone is wrong. Some things are destined to be ruined. Cheap dresses, student housing, self-esteem, romantic projections. Ice sculptures of dead jazz musicians turning to mush in the rain. Some of the fish did themselves in, leaping out past the filter and over the edge. Others just flipped over and floated up and started looking kind of shredded. Mostly, I think about how little I think about him now. Like he was just some decorative saltwater display in an overpriced lobby, or a hangover I sweated out in a single low-impact cardio weight routine, when once he was the creature who swallowed me whole in a huge, religiously significant way. Oh, I wanted to do this little Dorothy Parker one because Bob did that turn. He did a couple of turns. I think that might be something we kind of both do is pick up little patterns that people are going to recognize and then, you know, wring and twist them into our own nefarious ends. Um, so this is one that's a little turn on Dorothy Parker's resume, which is and many of you may know the original. Are there many of you out there? I have no idea who's there, but anyway, those of you, if you're there, who write, if you write, Dorothy Parker wrote a poem called Resume that goes, razors pain you, rivers are damp, acids stain you, and drugs cause cramp. Guns aren't lawful, nooses give, gas smells awful, you might as well live. So I made that into a little drinking song called Resume. Families shame you, rehab's a scam, lovers drain you and don't give a damn. Friends are distracted, aging stinks, you'll soon be subtracted, you might as well drink. And, gosh, this is going faster than I thought. So now I'm kind of like, what else should I read? I did, again, because, you know, it's interesting when you read with other writers and you hear the sort of the overlap of different concerns, but there was one about God that ended with God saying, so what? And reminded me of this poem I wrote about my brother's death called The Miraculous. And it's actually another 14-line monorhyme. The Miraculous. The band starts the song over, the rhythm's still wrong, sounds that will never alchemize to music. My brother's new liver is failing. There's someone's loud lover swearing to Christ in the bar to get sober, but the moon is being smothered by the trees and there is no ladder far enough. I go down to the mouth of the river, ugly with waste, yellow foam and trash, a tanker crawling the horizon. What does it bear? Oil or chemicals? I was taught a man could walk on water, that if I listened and unhinged my heart, I'd hear a presence stirring the air. And I do. God the murderer, making things perfectly clear. This is called Archive of Recent Uncomfortable Emotions. This haircut makes me feel ugly feeling. The however much I drink, I can't pretend it's love feeling. The strangled by the foul and ugly mists of vapors and iambic pentameter feeling. The everything I write is shit feeling. The I'm sorry I gave you those blowjobs and did you not understand the meaning of reciprocal feeling. The it's not my birthday anymore, I'm just older feeling. The looking at x-rays of my teeth feeling. The something died in your eyes and I can smell it feeling. The literary recognition might be just another shiny object feeling. The darkling I listen and right now I think it would be kind of cool to die feeling. The Keats is dead feeling. The Leonard Cohen is dead feeling. The blank and my blank are also quite dead feeling. The I am Jean Rhys getting blotto in a dismal room in Paris with black specks on the wall feeling. The maybe I'm just getting blotto feeling. The trees are no longer my friends feeling. The my friends are no longer my friends feeling. The once I was a 19th century Russian novel, but now I'm a frozen chicken entree feeling. The I can always return this feeling and the prepaid envelope provided feeling. The I am the prepaid envelope feeling. Another Keats poem. There's a few of them in this book. This is called Still Time, and I've had the incredible fortune and privilege to teach in Italy for every other year for 3 summers now, and hopefully 2022 is going to be the year that we can go there again. But one thing that's always on the schedule is a trip to Rome to visit the Keats Shelley house, where Keats died at the bottom of the Spanish Steps, and to visit the little room he died in, where he was with his friend Severin, the artist, and then we go to the graveyard where he's buried, and we read his poems to him over his grave. And Shelley is also buried there, and Gregory Corso is too, so you can go there and read to all of their spirits. This is called Still Time. In Severin's letters, Keats is still alive, though coughing blood. One day he's better. Then things look very bad, and if you stop reading, he's still lying there, calmer again and clearer, before they take his body out and burn the wallpaper. In books you fall in love with, you always slow down a few pages before the end, but then there you are, with only the back cover blurbs that say, "This story will make you cry," and maybe an outdated photo. When you photograph the famous fountain, the water stops moving, but water never really stops moving. Your plush lion swirled away, your parents floated off, okay, but also that wine stain on your shirt only looked permanent. After the horrifying bats and the cenote, little gold-flecked fish appeared. You finally stopped sobbing in the bathroom at weddings. You can't go back to 1821 and invent streptomycin, or stop the poet's kindly doctor from bleeding his patient. But you can climb the stairs to that room in Rome and see the flowers on the ceiling, the same ones Keats held for weeks in his fevered gaze. That's as close as you can get. Go home. Your miserable bitch of a neighbor is gone, carried out, and never to return. I call that my silver lining poem. And I'll read maybe one or two more. But what? Gosh, let me see if I have one short one to put before this final one, which is also pretty short. I'll do the one where the title line comes from. Small talk. Let's skip it and get straight to the rabid dog at hand. This is some weather we're cowering from. Would you please touch my face like a blind person? I feel like a giraffe in a parking garage. Let's skip it and get straight to the death smell coming from behind the refrigerator. Can I offer you something more subtly evocative of the underlying theme of your life story? How many self-important wounds do you have? Everything you say is tiresome. I'm going to walk away slowly and not look back. Now we're getting somewhere. That title has flipped a lot from, ironic to sincere and back. So I don't know, it depends on the day and the hour how you read it. I'm going to end with the last poem in the book. There's a lot of these poems that I feel I wrote for girls and women especially, and also for self-destructive girls and women. This is called Stay. So your device has a low battery and seems to drain faster each day. Maybe you should double your medication. You might feel queasy, but also as if the spatula flattening you to the fry pan has lifted a little. So your breath comes out scorched, so what? Inside, trust me on this, there's a ribbon of beach by a lake. In the sand, fragments of a fossilized creature resembling a tulip. Back in the Paleozoic, online wasn't invented yet, so everyone had to wander alone and miserable through the volcanic wastes, or just glue themselves to a rock hoping someone would pass by. Now you can sob to an image of your friend a continent away and be consoled. Please wait for the transmissions, however faint. Listen, when a stranger steps into the elevator with a bouquet of white roses not meant for you, they're meant for you. Thank you.
Fantastic stuff.
Thanks, Bob.
There are a couple of requests in the question, the Q&A thing. If you would like to read another one?
Is I don't know. I was going to ask you a couple questions too. Maybe we could have a short conversation and then see if requests or
Okay.
questions. Is that cool?
I'll let you know now if you want to think about it. What do women want? How is Vincent?
How is Vincent? Oh, who is that?
And
Somebody.
that is from Michelle Johnson.
Michelle. Hi, Michelle. Well, Vincent is not with us anymore. I actually gave her away to wonderful people when I moved to New York for a few years, and she had a long, happy life, but she did go away, and and I'll leave the other request on the floor for now. Um, but I appreciate whoever asked for it. If that was Michelle or whoever
It
asked for
was.
it.
It was.
Yeah, that was a popular one. That was sort of like, I've thought for a while I was like Tiny Kim, tiptoe through the tulips, red dress, you know, um, like the one hit wonder, the poem that went viral. Um, anyway, but I just wanted to ask, speaking of red, I was just curious, Bob, if you wanted to answer this. Your new book is called Red Rover from Cowper Canyon, and I'm going to order my copy when we get off this private Zoom call we're having between us. But I'm curious about where the title comes from and why you named it that and how it informs your collection.
It doesn't. I just liked it as a title. I've just always liked that phrase and the idea of calling people over in that way. It has no more thought to it than that.
Well, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I was thinking, I was thinking about it in terms of you have that poem like, have you been to a Zoom funeral yet? And you have the line about the the grave between us, or something about the distance of the grave between us, the 6 feet. And then so I was thinking about it as sort of like crossing boundaries and crossing over between life and death. At least that's one way it hit me from hearing that title and hearing you read those poems. That's what I was.
I like that. I
So
like that.
I don't know, maybe your subconscious had something in mind, you know?
Well, technically that poem is not in this book. I tend not to read
Oh, really? It's from an earlier one?
the books. No, it's a more recent poem.
Okay.
I don't know about you, but by the time a book comes out, I'm kind of tired of the poems. I'm
Yeah.
probably not supposed to admit this, but
I know, I hear you. That happens for me too, but it hasn't happened yet with this book because a number of these poems were actually written in 2020, kind of after the book had been taken by Norton. I knew it was going to be a year later, but
yeah,
I was doing more you sort of put in something that feels like an acceptable manuscript, hopefully, and
yeah,
you take a contract. You're like, okay, now I need to kind of make it better, and so I was still writing into 2020, and so that kind of informed some of them, and so they're a lot fresher for me.
mm,
And some of these is the first time I've read them aloud because I don't
wow,
tend to do my own work aloud to myself,
yeah,
you know. So
they
that's
really are. They're really good, and I was really happy to hear you mention Paul Guest. He's a nice guy.
yeah. I got one of his books and I liked it and I was reading it and it was kind of triggering. When you read and something triggers you, like that phrase, "The earth is about used up," just kind of set off a little sparkler in my brain somewhere,
Yeah,
and got me writing, which is often what happens. So yeah. And your work is work I've actually looked at too and sort of started trying to take apart some of the syntactical constructions and reverse engineer them to see if I could steal something from you too. So I just like the inventiveness of your work, and I think we both do this thing of borrowing, which is really just sort of like, I mean, to me it's like, I don't know shit about rap or hip hop, but sampling
mhm,
whatever that falls in, when and then they start taking snatches of songs,
yeah,
and redoing them. I kind of feel like I do that a lot in my poetry. where I'll pull patterns or pull lines, or like the Dorothy Parker poem I did, or your Christmas, um, coming on Christmas poem, and kind of just borrow those structures in an obvious way so that hopefully people recognize that's what you're doing. And but then you play with them or try to reinvent them in some way.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, so maybe we have, maybe Devin, we have some questions from the audience, or is that
Yeah.
happening?
Well, we've got a lot of, frankly, a lot of love. It's mostly comments coming in that are like former students that are talking about the impact that you've had with them. Um, I guess that's maybe a question that I would have for the both of you, being people who are working with students in a poetry context, might be that how that process influences your actual poetry writing. Like, do you find that working with the material of students, helping them on certain segments of their paths, affects uh, the sorts of thoughts that you have? For harkening back to Bob, that's the kind of thought I would have in a poem. Does it change what kind of thoughts those are for you?
Bob, do you want to take that one first?
Sure. For whatever reason, teaching has remained largely separate from me, and I'm from my own writing, and I'm happy that's the case. I don't I don't want to feel that in any way my needs, my desires, my expectation intrudes on that work, or that space. On the other hand, that's me. I like it when I hear people talking about um, how it is kind of interactive for them, how it does impact their writing. It's not been the case for me. And again, personally, I like that separation.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I mean, I think in a lot of ways it doesn't inform my writing, but what does is sometimes the research I'll do to teach, I'll be looking for, I often, not always, but I often give sample poems for a prompt that I'm giving my students because I really believe in that model of looking to models and sort of learning that way. And it's also a way to get everybody to keep people reading, So if they have a particular assignment about whatever it happens to be, like we just did, I just gave some of my students assignment on concessional structure. And so in researching that, like, okay, where are those poems? Like, let me find a bunch of poems to email to them. And I will be reading those poems, and that might start something in my head to like, well, maybe I should do this myself. And I don't always do, or even often anymore, do the prompts I give my students. But I do sometimes in the reading I'm doing, often, leads me down somewhere that'll get me started writing. And actually, the What Do Women Want, Michelle, the red dress poem, is one that I started in a class from the simple trigger of I want, that anaphora assignment, which is a great one that you can do over and over with any kind of word that you just start repeating to see where it takes you. And so the trigger was use I want and go on from there. And that was actually how that poem got written, in a free write in a classroom. That's how it started. Usually my free writes are terrible, but for some reason this one kind of started to pan out, and then I worked on it some more. So my students are much better at that. I give them, we're doing in class writing or something, and they come up with amazing stuff, and I'm just writing nada nada, this sucks, or writing something I've written before, and it doesn't happen for me. I wish it did. But yeah, so that's the way it sort of works with me.
All right. Well, we're getting pretty close to the end here, but I did want to finish on both of you are fairly prolific in terms of the amount of output that you're working on, and Kim, in your case, the different modes that you're working in. I was just wondering if you had any closing thoughts on the long haul. in terms of creative process?
Well, I don't know. I guess, I think one of the artists, not necessarily as a man, but as an artist, I think about Picasso because he just kept exploring. I mean, he had his blue period, he had this period, he had, and he just kind of took in all the influence, anything he saw, he just tried it. And then I remember going to the Picasso Museum in Paris and seeing how he had like painted on plates and on chairs, and he made these guitars, and he just like everything, he just kept turning everything into art, and he kept doing that until late in life. And I think, as you get older as an artist, you do worry about repeating yourself, and you worry about getting into a particular um, rut rather than a groove, and you want to keep trying to be inspired and find ways to creatively move. So I just admire that, and always just keep trying to find ways, in some sense, ways to be a beginner at something, you know, to begin something new. And that's a way to kind of wake up my brain again and not just do the same things. And hopefully keep writing. Yeah. Bob?
Actually, what comes to mind for me is the movie Billy Elliot, which I happened to watch again recently, and I love that movie.
Me too.
There's a scene when this very awkward but kind of amazing kid is talking to the folks he's just auditioned for, and he can't say shit. He just has nothing to say. But someone asks him what he feels when he dances. And he starts to open up, and he becomes more and more expressive, yet still kind of awkward. And he finally talks about disappearing and feeling like fire and then electricity. And to me, that disappearance, I think, is the thing. It's kind of a cliche, but it's the thing to pay attention to. If you find that going on, you are probably doing something you should do or meant to do. If it's writing, fantastic. And if you lose that feeling or non-feeling, if that's what it would be, do whatever it takes to get it back. And I think in that, you will naturally over time end up being inventive unto yourself, because I think we really do kind of want to let go of ourselves, and making things is the best way for us to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Right.
thank you so much, both of you, Bob and Kim, for this has just been an excellent night. Again,
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
oh yeah, you're welcome.
Do you
Uh,
books
Again,
have
for the viewers, Bob's most recent collection is Red Rover on Copper Canyon, and Kim's is Now We're Getting Somewhere, and they are both available at greenapplebooks.com or your local independent bookstores, wherever that may be. So I think we're ready to let you go, and just
All right.
thank you one more time.
Thank you, Devin. Thanks so much. Thanks, Bob. It was
Thank you,
great.
Kim. It was
Yeah.
good to see you.
You too.
See you later.
AWP next year,
Go to Italy again, I hope.
I hope.
See you.
Okay. Bye. Hey, Devin.
Yeah.
Um, is there a way to see the chat at some point? Like, do you guys save that and send them, or?
Oh, I think you should be able to see it. Let me see if I can stop the
Is it
broadcast and we can go
possible to
through.
save it? Just so I know who was here. It's nice to kind of know who showed up.
Yeah, sure, sure.
I don't know how to save
Um,
it though.
yeah, so I've got your email. I'll just go ahead and copy this
Oh,
and
great. Thank
send it
you.
over. Okay. All right.
Thanks so much for hosting us. It was great.
Thank you.
All right. Ciao.